Hi everybody. So if you recall from a video that I did briefly explaining what type 1 and type 2 is in relation to Tarot de Marseille and what Tarot de Marseille is, you would recall a timeline such as this one here. Beginning of the formation of that pattern, which I think happened organically and not, it wasn't predetermined. I think perhaps our modern historian eyes cast, if we were to cast our eyes back to the past, the pattern started forming around about the 1600s with this particular one here, the Jean Noblet in Paris. And then we observe, and whether these guys actually evolve one deliberately to the other or not is debatable, but we observe similar patterns and the evolution of this pattern further in Lyon in the early 1700s, and then in Avignon with the Payen over here in the early 1700s, 1713, and of course here we have the Madenier, if you recall, in the early 1700s, where the second pattern or the type 2 pattern started evolving, at least judging from the oldest deck we have currently. The oldest surviving deck we have currently which exhibits the type 2 pattern is the Madenier from 1701 here, or 1710, sorry, 1709, 1710 here. If there are others older than that, if there are others older than this, if there are others around here, we do not have the physical object, we do not have the physical material exhibit, so to speak, to form that theory around. So based on what we have, the timeline based on decks which have survived, the timeline is as such. Now, if you recall, in the type 2, the ones that we were discussing were all from Marseille, unlike these three, the type 1s. The Conver, if you recall, is really the template for modern Marseille, or what we understand as modern Marseille. And if you recall, the François Chosson from 1736 is the template for the Conver over here. Now, what I would like to do this in this video is to show you another Conver, this one here. So the one on the left is Conver by Christophe Poncet. The one on the right is the Conver reproduction by Yves Reynaud. Yves Reynaud is the person who's responsible for these series here, a series of historical reproduction. And these two are from Jean-Claude Flournoy, who's passed away a few years ago. But Flournoy's studio is known for redrawing. So these two here, the Dodal and the Noblet, are redrawing, while these three from Yves' workshop, or from Yves Reynaud's shop and studio, are reproduction of historical decks. So they are facsimiles, these ones. So I finally managed to get a hold of this one to show you. And if you recall, I mentioned how the earlier edition of the Conver has light blue and green, which then disappeared after the mechanization of printing in the 1800s. And so you see the light blue there and the green. And so let's put all the others aside for now. Let's take the timeline out of the way. I'm going to compare only the majors, because this one here consists only of the majors. And what I will do is also bring you up to a screen of my desktop up there to show you a website, Camoin.com. And Camoin is the family, I believe, who was responsible for printing this Conver in the 1700s. So the descendant of that Camoin is still alive today, and he and Jodorowsky worked together and created that Jodorowsky Camoin Tarot de Marseille that is quite well known. So let's take a look at, I'll just focus this, and then we'll take a look at the majors. So that's the English right up there. So let's do this. Oh, that noise is in the background, you guys. I do apologize. It is actually quite, it's irritating me a great deal. So first of all, before we do this comparison, I would like to tilt this up, and there'll be a lot of movement, and I will not be able to do any smoothing afterwards because, or maybe I will try, I don't know. But I would like to show you this. Take a look at this magician here. So that's the 1760 edition with the light blue and green. And then we go this way and take a look at that magician. As you can see, the light blue and greens disappeared. And so you see here is blue and yellow and red. And then we can look at the sleeve here. Blue, yellow, and red. This used to be green. Yellow, sky, light blue, and green. In the later edition, it's blue, yellow, and red. So the light blue and green disappeared. So I'll take you back here. There it is. The light blue and green disappeared. So I've mentioned that in the previous video as and that is important because I would like to show you that this is a reproduction of the earlier edition before printing was mechanized. So I think both of these attempted to return to the earlier edition when colors were still applied using by hand through stenciling. So other than shades of blues and shades of red, it's pretty close. Now which one you prefer is pretty personal. Unless we can see the original in the museum, it's pretty hard to judge which one is more accurate. So there's a lot more, like the lapel of the Popas on the right, or Yves' version on the right, is green, and interestingly Poncet's version there is blue. The card is also bigger on Poncet's version. So it looks like the green is more prominent. Yves Reynaud's version seems to be a little bit closer to how it might have been. I will link Camoin's website down below, but it looks to me like the green is a little bit lighter on the 18th century example that we just saw, but we do not know if that is a function of time or not. Perhaps the green had faded, we do not know. So again, the green is very blue. You can't see here, but under natural light you can see the green, but the green is so dark and so close to blue that even the camera can't pick it up. So like here you can't really tell, but maybe you can see, if you can see there, you can see the shades are a bit different. That's because that's green, but really dark green, really bluish green. While Yves' version on the right gives a bit more, it's a bit, the differences between the blue and the green is a bit more apparent. So I beg your pardon, when I said that the green part in Poncet's version is blue, it's actually not. It's actually green, but the camera can't pick it up. And I'm actually looking at the cards because my camera is right in front of me. I'm actually looking at the cards through the viewfinder just now, so through the eyes of the device. As I look over my device to take a look, this is actually green, but very, very dark, and has such a strong blue undertone that I can see why the camera confused them. Yeah, very dark. So Yves' version is a bit less solid. The color is a bit more transparent. Because Yves' version is a facsimile, and I think Christophe Poncet's version on the left might have been a redrawing, or it might have been tweaked to make it perhaps more of a working deck. If you can see the lines. You can see the tail, for example, you can see there compared to that one there. Poncet's version is solid line, and if I am a betting woman, I would bet that that's redrawn and cleaned up, while this one is potentially copied directly with slight tweaking, because I believe this version here, the sources of this version here is 3 museums, one in Japan, one in France, and one in England. Well, let's take a look later after I finish with the side-by-side. My device is struggling, you guys, so please bear with me. Christophe Poncet's version on the left doesn't have an English write-up, so I couldn't quite, decipher what's been done or what his aim was or anything like that. Yves' version on the right there has an English introduction, so I will quickly read from that later. Feel free to freeze whichever frame you need to do a closer inspection. And again, this one's more translucent, a bit more like a photocopy, while this one here is more like a redrawing, almost like Jean-Claude Flournoy's, almost like this sort here, but not as deliberately modernizing, or not as deliberately redrawing them. So it's like it's in between. So as a result, the Yves facsimile, or what, which is practically a photocopy, is obviously a little bit less smooth, more translucent, with the colors a bit more rugged looking, just by a fraction. So It says here, Yves Reynaud's version of the Conver here. So this edition is based on copies of the National Library in France, the British Museum, and the Miike PlayingCard Memorial Museum of Omuta in Japan. This edition is the first faithful restoration of a deck long time considered as the reference of the Marseille Tarot. The basis of our modern Marseille is this one here, and this is the 1700s, the version 1760, and not the one in the 1800s, which kind of lost the sky blue and the green. So, and then it says here, the Conver family originates from Isere, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, in the Dauphin region, just like two other card makers established in Marseille, Chosson and Cheminade, I don't know. So Conver settles down in Marseille in 1766. One of his 5 children is named Nicolas Conver. He became card maker as his father from 1801 until 1829. The genealogy of this family and the commercial practices of the corporation thus incite to the caution as for the identity of the real author of this magnificent tarot, finely engraved and adorned with beautiful colors. Indeed, at the time, wooden molds were usually resold further to the death or bankruptcy of master card makers. It was not rare that the name was directly replaced on the mold by carving out the wood block on the II of Deniers, card on which was traditionally engraved the name of the card maker. Yep. This new edition of the so-called Tarot of Nicolas Conver constitutes the most faithful republication to date of a deck long time considered as the references of the Marseille Tarot. It is based on the copies of the Bibliotheque Nationale de France and British Museum in England and the Miike PlayingCard Memorial Museum of Omuta in Japan. So this is by Yves Reynaud, and he's the Marseille researcher, and Wilfred Houdin, so we've seen that name again. Graphic designer and author of Tarot of Marseille Millennium Edition 2017, and this is number 895 out of 1,500. I don't usually put too much meaning to that because not everybody ship in order. And so there it is. Talk to you guys later. Bye.